The Rallye des Cimes, or in plain English, the Rally of the Peaks, and in this case, the peaks of the Pyrenees, up here in the swirling clouds, goodness knows how many feet above sea level. If you're fond of poetry, you probably think of that girl Miranda who had trouble with the fleas in the high Pyrenees, but there's more to it than that. In fact, this is the Basque country, the country of a very proud, independent people, who are very conscious of their ancestry and of their quite extraordinary, unpronounceable language. Very conscious of the fact that they're not French. In fact, they're no more French than the Welsh are English. It's a country of hill farms, little farms clinging onto the side of mountains with sheep and cattle, and of course mule tracks, and the farmers used to use mules. After the last war, when the whole of France was full of surplus jeeps, they gave up the mules and took to jeeps. This is a French army jeep. The Hotchkiss Company are still making them. And when this event started some 13 years ago, it was in fact a sort of frantic free-for-all, point-to-point for the local farmers who chased across country. But it's got more serious than that now. Other people have joined in. It's got international status, and there are other vehicles besides jeeps. Vehicles cast in the same mould, because you can't do this rally without a lot of power and four-wheel drive. It's really quite an event. You need a good head for heights and a good strong stomach for the bouncing about you get, and really a great deal of guts. In fact, it sent me back to think of a new version of the naughty old nursery rhyme about the nanny goat. The higher up the mountain, the greener grows the grass, and down came a rally man sliding on his... Don't get flustered, don't get red. The poor little rally man was sliding on his head. No event could be more off the beaten track than the Rallye des Cimes. It runs through the Pyrenees between France and Spain. 100 miles of high revs and low gear driving on gradients as steep as 1 in 3. At 4,000 feet up, the jeeps have only cows and mountain goats for company. Stage 1, La Teinture, 7 o'clock on an autumn Saturday morning. French army jeeps go first, and the fastest man up these 2 miles of mud and ruts and rock will be placed first in the driving order for the next 2 days. So everyone tries hard. The Cornille, the French answer to the American Jeep, but under the bonnet a 2-litre 6-cylinder British Leyland engine, driven by a local wine merchant called Pellicet, and like every other vehicle in this rare event, 4-wheel drive. Arnaud Boucher, son of the man who started the Rally of the Peaks. Local man, 33, runs a hotel, won the event 8 years ago and has done it 8 times. This year, back in business with a 5-litre Chevrolet engine propelling his Willis Jeep. A very hot special, and he was fastest by 2 minutes up this particular pinnacle of the Pyrenees. With more horsepower and local knowledge than anyone else, Boucher would also be quickest up 3 of the 6 special stages which lay ahead. From Austria, the Haflinger, a cross-country competitor made by Steer Puck. Very light and narrow, all-round independent suspension. But this version, with a 2-cylinder Panhard engine of 845cc, needed a bit more elbow grease even in the hands of veteran garagiste Henri Lousteau. French Cornille again, this time with a diesel engine. Obviously slower than the Leyland petrol version, but fast enough to beat all the French army jeeps up the slippery slopes of the Teinture. The big surprise was this twin-engined Haflinger, driven by Johann Weingartmann, an Austrian now in his 50s. He was only 6 seconds slower than the winning Willis V8.
Robert Legrand in a Jeep built by the French Hotchkiss firm, powered by an 1800cc BMW of Munich. Legrand once won this event in a Land Rover, but the British firm decided this time not to enter. So it was left to the Jeeps, the Haflingers and the Cornhills to fight out this unseasonably wet 13th Rallye des Cimes. In this part of the Pyrenees, the Basque farmers prefer the Jeep to the Land Rover because it's a little less bulky. Renault are trying for a share of the market with their cross-country Mouchang, which is assembled in Belgium. It has two four-cylinder engines, one at the front and one at the back, thick sump guards, heavy-duty shock absorbers, insulated driving seat. The Rallye is a car breaker and a bone shaker, but to win is important, especially to a Basque, like Jean-André Toulet.
The Basque like dangerous sport. And every year, Basque receive stranger drivers, and every year it wants make the best course. And every year, Basque forgets the course of the last year, and every year it thinks, this year I am the first.
Character in the Popeye films, because a US Army sergeant said at the time, that Jeep will do anything. Five and a half litres instead of 2 under the bonnet of Boucher's Jeep again give the local champion 1 minute's lead on this rain-soaked scramble uphill. In the wet, the trick is to know when to lift off on the throttle and stop spinning over the edge. Leopold Mouchang in the twin-engine vehicle he built himself, Renault powered. He would end the rally runner-up, only 14 seconds behind the winner after 2 days and 100 miles of switchback motoring like this. The top of the pass, 4,000 feet up, noon Saturday. Humid heat in the valleys gives way to icy mist near the summit of the Gambidesca. The rally men rattle and roar their way towards the first hour's rest they will have had since dawn. In the 13 years of the Rally of the Peaks, at least one driver has died and several have been injured. This man, Roger Gossin, was lucky. A 32-year-old car salesman from Paris Spectators found him wandering in a daze in the middle of the third special stage, covered in mud and bruises. A few yards away down the forest track was a hole in the hedge that showed what had happened to his Haflinger. Gossin, twice a winner of the event in previous years, had managed to jump clear as his Haflinger left the road and rolled 100 feet into the middle of the field. Others went out of the rally in a safer way. The first girl ever to enter the event, 25-year-old France Ricard, got her Renault Cimes stuck in the mud, and no amount of manpower would help her out. Meanwhile, the survivors, who had now covered all of 20 punishing miles on this soaking Saturday morning, wound their way up the mountainside to a lunch stop among the sheep in sight of Spain. Summer long, these passes in the Pyrenees had echoed to the roar of French holiday traffic heading south to the sun of Spain. Now, the only visible movement through the mountains Napoleon called the end of Europe was a dozen jeeps hurrying across great fields of stubble to try and beat the setting sun to a night's rest in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Sunday, the second and last day of the event. Only 30 miles to go, and when the early morning mist cleared from the mountain top at last, the sun was shining. Is still in the lead. His Jeep, with its big 5-litre Chevy engine, is averaging something like 40 miles an hour over this mud and rubble. It's the final speed test before the finish. The rallycross Basque style was on the Monte des Dames at Cambo on a sunny Sunday afternoon. The parachutists of the French army were to secure 7th and 8th places out of the 13 who finished. Sheer power was not enough in this event. With gradients too steep for spectators to stand on, lightweight counted for a great deal. And the Austrian Haflinger, with only 1200 cc, achieved an astonishing third place with Weingartman at the wheel. Ford Competitions manager Stuart Turner was there among the crowd. What did he think of it all?
As an interesting event, it's always got a place. We need rallies that have got a character all of their own. We've got the Alpine with the hills, we've got the Thousand Lakes with the jumping in Finland. We need events like this that have got a peculiar thing to offer to rallying. I think long term, with events like the London to Mexico, the London to Sydney, the big events like the Monty as well, we may get a pattern of these, a few of these each year, plus one or two of these sort of things. Although I think if our top drivers ever came on a thing like this, they'd scare themselves silly because the flying Finns, they've never jumped as far as these boys have got to do.
Was there a place in our own calendar at home for this kind of event?
Very much so. As you go over the route, and people have seen it's so much like Wales, it isn't true, and we could certainly run an event exactly like this. I wish we could do this, because we've got a problem that rallying in other countries is allowed. You can rally on the open road, you can close roads by the police to run top-flight rallies against the clock. We can't do this in this country, which means that in England we're not producing the top rally drivers that we should be doing, and this helps export if you've got top drivers to promote your cars abroad. If we could run this sort of thing, the immediate people to enter that appeal to me would be the farmers. Now, if they took part in this with their Land Rovers, Jeeps and so on and so forth, enjoyed it, they would become more responsive towards rallying, and therefore I think it would help rallying as a whole. Plus, of course, you get spectators, which is always good for rallying.
Land Rovers have won the Rallye des Cimes more than once, and with the prospect of a more powerful model on the way, they could come back into the event next year with good odds on winning again. Competing drivers also said they thought the twin-engine version of the British Leyland Minimoke would also do well in view of its narrow track. But for the present, the Jeep, the Haflinger and the Cornhill have the Rallye des Cimes all to themselves. Local champion Arnaud Boucher tastes the wine of victory. But he too, a competitive Basque, would like to see the British back in the Rallye des Cimes.
Most of the vehicles they use are Jeeps or something derived from them, and it's worth remembering that this now 30-year-old design is really the daddy of them all. Everything springs from the Jeep. And in this event in particular, dimensions are very important because the track is extremely narrow and some of the gullies are very deep. So size is a matter of considerable importance. Things like track and wheelbase really matter. So from wheelbase, good night.